5K time trials are great for a multitude of reasons. Here at Coach Perry, we are big fans of doing a 5K time trial, and we'll incorporate them into almost all of our training plans. There are different reasons for why we do this. We're going to get stuck into that in this video, talking about how important they are, why we like doing them, and most importantly, how you can best nail that 5K time trial.
We often have people come to us and say, oh, well, I was much slower in my time trial and it really was terrible. And then we probe a little bit more and we figure out that, well, actually, they ran their time trial on a hillier course, or maybe it was summer versus winter and the temperatures were different. And so the reliability of your time trial and how you measure it is really, really, really key, right? So you want to ensure that, one, you're running it on the same route, so that every single time it is a comparable to the last one. So that's key. Of course, we cannot control the temperature, but just take that into account. So if you really do have a terrible time trial, just, was it warmer? Was it more humid? Heat and humidity is always going to have an effect on your performance, no matter what you do. So that is something you need to take into account. So running it on the same route, thinking about the environmental conditions, what are the differences that have taken place there, and also just really making sure that you try and replicate or have a routine towards these time trials. So if your plan says that you need to have a recovery day before your time trial, have a recovery day. Don't go out and do a big hike or an hour-long cycle. Make sure that you eat well the day before and leading into that, and try and keep that routine similar. Try and control all the variables as much as you can going into that time trial, because that will then allow for high reliability, and then we can really take test one or time trial one and time trial two and compare the two without any sort of major differences.
Okay, so part of mastering the time trial is also understanding the conditions that you do your time trial in. So remember that for most of you, you'll be doing the time trial on your own on a weekend. You'll maybe have a route that you've set and you go out and you run. And running on your own versus running in a race or say in a park run is a very, very different dynamic. I think we've all experienced that when you go out and run in a race, it almost feels easier when you go out, that first couple of Ks in a hard 5K or 10K just feels so much more manageable over when you're running with people. And there is actually evidence to back this up, that when you do run with a group of people, that you will tend to be faster. There was a study that was done with some runners in Sao Paulo over a 10K where they found that running alone versus running with other people, there was a 58-second difference in favor of those who ran in a group. What's interesting was that both groups found the run as equally difficult, but the people running on their own tended to focus on the more negative parts of the exertion, that, oh my gosh, it's hard, I've got so much more further to go, while the runners who were running in a group tended to have more positive reactions to the exertion. Almost like there's something about running with people. Maybe if you're running together, it feels easier, and that you are chasing someone else, that you have someone to sort of look to and say, I'm going to catch up to that person. And we know there's also some dynamic about running with people, and aerodynamics and drafting. The science on that is not conclusive, but we know there's something to it. So keep that in mind when you're doing your time trial, that you are never going to be as fast as you're going to be in a race. And also, you're not going to run a PB every single week, because it depends on your training status, it depends where you are, and also it's a chance for you to experiment. So you might make mistakes, and it's fine to make mistakes now in your time trial, and then you can figure out what to do and what not to do. So when you do run your race, especially for the marathons where you really only have one shot at it, that you've figured out what works and what doesn't work.
So the reason we love the 5K at Coach Perry is because it's something that you can do fairly often. It's quite repeatable, and it doesn't leave loads of damage and need for recovery. And it gives you so much feedback. In a 5K time trial, if you get your pacing wrong, that last 2 kilometers can really feel like the worst and longest 2Ks of your life. But because it's repeatable, you can learn the lessons from each time trial and do that a couple of times until you master the 5 kilometer. And what is amazing about the human body is that once we master something like a 5K, that easily then replicates into a 10K. And effectively what you're teaching your body on a 5K is how much energy, how much effort it can manage over a 5K. And these things are so relative. You'll know that person in your club, the person that just cannot get this right. In a 5K, they'll die at 3.5 Ks. In a 10K, they will die at 6 Ks. In a half marathon, they will die at 15, 16 kilometers. In a marathon, they die at 30 kilometers. The relative time, roughly 2/3 into the race, is always the same. And that's why once you nail the 5K, it teaches your body exactly how much energy it can mete out over the course of a 30-minute run, of a 45-minute run, of a 60-minute run. And it will really teach you how to pace yourself and how to use up the energy you've got available over multiple distances just by getting the 5K right.
Running a 5K time trial, it is important to note that this is not your goal race. Even if you are on a 5K plan, for example, and your plan might be to run a sub 30-minute 5K, it's not to say that you are expected to run under 30 minutes in your time trials. One thing that is quite important with a time trial, and what we do need to note, is these are used as progress measures. So how well is the current training plan you're on working for you? There is also a learning aspect to this. It is important to note that yes, sometimes the plan works really well. You might be progressing quite quickly and you might actually run under the goal time for a particular time trial. However, it is also a chance that you might actually not run a good time. You might have a bad time trial, and that is okay. It's really important to emphasize that this is not your goal. The learning aspect to running a bad time trial, for example, is, well, that gives us a good indication that maybe you do need a little bit more freshening up. Maybe something in the last block of training wasn't quite right and we do need to tweak things. This is why we love to use a time trial in training, because that gives us a good indication of what's working, what's not working, and where we can make those adjustments. We often get a lot of people that are concerned around, I ran a time trial in week 4 of my training plan and ran another one in week 8 of my training plan, and there was no improvement. It was the same time, or there was only a 2-second improvement. We need to maybe also just step back and look at a bigger picture here. The first time trial to the second time trial, what else has changed? Are you running pain-free where the last one maybe you weren't? So there's been progression in other measures rather than just what the time of your time trial was. Were you able to pace yourself better, more sustained effort throughout that time trial? So those are the couple of things that we look at, and we start to deduce what is working, what's not working, what are you getting better at, what are you mastering, and how we can tweak the rest of the plan going forward. This is not your goal race. You are not trying to be at your absolute best. We want you running these hard. That's obviously how we are making these determinations, but this is not your goal event, and I can tell you there will be times you will have a bad time trial, and it's not the end of the world. See it as a learning curve and what we can do to get better going forward.
So, how can we help you get to that end point of mastering the 5K quicker? I'm going to give you some tips on how to approach a 5K so that you can get your pacing right, or at least close to right, quickly, so that you can learn the benefits of teaching yourself how to pace yourself longer. A 5K will follow a very typical pattern when we nail it and get it perfectly right. You will run the first kilometer slightly too fast. Invariably, that's created by either the excitement or anticipation of the 5K, Plus, when we do a time trial, there's normally people around us or in a race, so we do get dragged out just that little bit fast. Then we need to get control of our pacing and be very close to the pace that we believe that we can run for kilometer 2 and kilometer 3. And then often, more psychological than physical, we get into this place where we do start to feel the strain of that time trial and the pace comes off ever so slightly. But in the last K to a K and a half, when you sense that you are now approaching the end, we are always able to pick it up and give more of ourselves and finish with a really fast final kilometer, which is often either similar or slightly slower than that first kilometer. So the trick to this is having a look at your training, figuring out roughly what you think you're capable of on that 5K, setting the average pace that you want to run over those 5Ks, understanding, for example, if that's a 25-minute 5K, 5 minutes per kilometer or 8 minutes per mile, then you'll know that that first kilometer is probably going to come in 5 to 6 seconds too quick. The second and the third kilometer we want to be almost bang on, 4:59, 5:01, so as tight around that 5 as we can. The fourth kilometer will probably be 3 to 4 seconds too slow, and then that final kilometer hopefully under 5 minutes a K. Now that you know the importance of getting a 5K time trial right, it's equally important to prepare properly and know what you're capable of. So watch this video now.